trying to fix a meadow is actually pretty complicated. You involve lots of specialists, hydrologists, botanists, geomorphologists, soil scientists, and ask yourself lots of questions like, what did it used to look like? What might have caused the disturbance? Collect topographic data and put a plan together of what you think might have been the root cause of degradation and how you might be able to reverse that trend.
It's not something you do in an office or on a computer. You have to be out here with your laser and your rod, your eyes, your feet, day after day after day.
One of the principal decisions on when we decide to fix a degraded stream channel is the depth of incision of it, or basically how far it's down cut from its former base elevation. So if a stream isn't down cut very far and hasn't incised, there's a variety of techniques that you can use. You can build brush dams, you can build beaver dams, you can build post-assisted log structures, you can add material to the riffles, all with the goal of grading that riffle so that when flood flows happen, that flood water assesses the floodplain more quickly. Unfortunately, if incision is really deep, you have an intermittent system and you don't have a lot of sediment supply, you're left with using some form of equipment to add to the base elevation of the channel to raise it. And so in this instance, we use wheel loaders to borrow material and add it to the base of the stream channel. And we use an excavator to salvage sod and put sod back on top of the stream channel. Many of the channels we're filling actually were never a stream channel. They're an artificial feature that's likely a result of an old wagon trail, a cattle trail, possibly a motorcycle trail, that at some point captured water in a high flow event and became a new channel. We know this because when we shoot cross-section data, which is elevation data across the meadow surface, we get a picture of where the valley low is. And so if my arm is the meadow looking down Palmetto and the valley low is here, but the stream channel is here, we know it's at a higher base elevation than the valley low. And so that tells us that gravity always wins. The stream channel shouldn't be there.
The one right behind us, the one with the kind of serpentine that you can see with the topsoil on either side, what we do is we go in and we remove the topsoil and that really great vegetation, all that organic matter, and we put it on the sides of the channel. And then we go up on the slope and we get some subsoil material and we fill that incision to floodplain elevation, and then we take that topsoil and we put it back on top. And in a year or two, you won't be able to tell that we were here. I mean, you can tell we're here now, but the goal is that you would never know.
So our primary outcome is to restore hydrologic function of this site, which really means we want base flows and slight flood flows to access the floodplain. This is a low gradient riparian system, and so it really should flood, water should be on the floodplain surface almost every year. And so our treatment of raising the base elevation of the channels to spread the flood water out, we would expect to see that in the first year if we have a little bit of rain. This year was an incredible drought, so in a year like this it may not have happened, but in most years it will. What happens when we do that is the water infiltrates into the soil, sits there late into the summer, and then slowly percolates through the soil to the stream channel and then down through the system.
Hydrology is the primary driver of these habitats, and when they start to dry out, then you lose a lot of the values here. And boy, you look around and there really aren't very many wetland meadows, especially that used to be wetland, and a lot of them are more mesic and tending toward even xeric, drier habitats. We are really trying to restore the wet meadow type of habitat, which is pretty rare and provides a lot of habitat for like neotropical migrant birds and flora and fauna that you don't see that much of because there isn't that kind of habitat available.
What you're seeing here at this meadow, which used to be a very wet meadow that allowed this peat to form here in the first place, it's now dry. Most of it is charred peat, and it's no longer functioning the way it did when it was covered, saturated. So this wall, this gully wall here that we're standing next to, the water that comes is just immediately being drained because of these deep incisions. While the water is always going to be moving downstream, the meadow really affects the rate at which that can happen, and essentially the availability of that water further into the drier, hotter parts of the year for the plants, for the animals, and for the humans downstream.
Particularly now with climate change and more droughts, it's crucially important for these meadows to function so that they're holding water early in the year and then releasing it later in the summer when fish need it, when wildlife needs it, and we as Californians need it. We talk a lot about the vegetation and we talk a lot about the wildlife and the aquatic species, carbon, but the reality is here, everything requires this meadow to function hydrologically.
Just like everything, just like for you and me, water is life, you know. And, you know, when you have disturbance like this, you're losing water and you're losing soil. These are the two things that are required for human habitation of this planet. Geologic times, it makes no difference whether we fix this or not. In our times, in the times that we're here to make an influence or to have to live on the planet, saying those differences make a lot, because these systems would be functional if we hadn't messed them up in the last 150 years. And who knows how long they would have stayed functional, because, they, you know, like I said, geologic timescale is millions and billions of years. So, you know, we have a long time for it to be in this state.
I mean, we're looking at like some pretty serious issues, you know, with planet Earth that provides everything we need. Soils are a key carbon sink.
Degraded meadows are actually emitting carbon to the atmosphere just like a car or a power plant. However, healthy meadows are actually bringing the carbon back in, putting it into the soil. And so there's all that organic matter in the root system, as well as it gradually precipitating carbon back out of the roots and into the soil. So then a restored or healthy meadow is actually a net carbon sink. So it's taking carbon out of the atmosphere and storing it in the soil. And because meadows do store the bulk of the carbon in the soil, it's a more stable storage mechanism. When we think of all the fires we have burning the carbon that's stored in the trees of the forest, a fire can move through a meadow. It may burn through the grass, but it's not burning the roots. And the roots is where the bulk of the carbon are. You just drop a stone in a pond, no pun intended, and these are the ripples that are going out. Up the wildlife chain, up the water chain, up the carbon chain. They're just hugely important landscape features. The great part about this is by continuing to do this over and over again, year after year, and basically we marry those projects. They're ours forever, and we're watching them forever because they have something to teach us. 1 year later, 5 years later, 10 years later. They're always teaching us new things and that we can incorporate into upcoming projects. So it's a fascinating and very rewarding thing to do. It's also very difficult.